You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
Yeah, so and let me introduce. So when I think about this for myself, for my family, it's about 140,000. We've got 4 kids, like a lot of,
We got more kids.
We got more kids, that means more money, right? And then thinking about the travel we want to do, it might be a little bit more than that, but somewhere around there. Now, my husband and I also have other sources of revenue. So when I look at how much money do I want or need to make from coaching as a contribution to the overall, what does it look like now? What does it look like in the future? How much do we want to continue to invest? All of that stuff plays a factor. So each person that's listening to this, your situation is going to be different. But regardless of if it's different or not, you still need to know your numbers. How much money are you getting from a spouse's job? How much money are you getting from a different business? How much money do you have from investments that you've already made? All of that stuff matters into the big picture, which can help reduce the level of anxiety and pressure around needing to hit this huge number. But at the same time, that stress and anxiety is kind of good. In the psychology world, we know that there's like this bell curve to the level of stress that's optimal. Too much stress is debilitating. Too little stress is demotivating. So there is this sweet spot in the middle where we want to have some pressures and expectations on ourselves, because that's what helps us to do things and not just to be a bump on the log for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, and that is so important to think about. That how are you structuring your life? And also, this is one of those weird things with coaches that I've seen, is that they want to remove stress altogether. They want to remove, but think about anything that you do that's worth doing. More than likely, you will have excitement and anxiety around it, a mix of the two feelings. It won't be just like if you're trying to get on, like, speak on stage, like, if you don't feel anxious before you go there, it probably doesn't mean shit all to you. It's like you've done it too long. It's just whatever. It's like even with sessions, like to this day in coaching sessions, I'm much more confident and comfortable, but I want to do well. I want to support my clients well. So I have a certain level of anxiety associated with it. It's not anxiety in the thing that's debilitating, like Dr. Sherry, but it's the kind that helps you, motivates you to do things.
Absolutely.
That's very important to have in everything that you're doing, which means that your system is challenging itself to do better. But I want to make it more real and tangible, because here's where the problem occurs. A lot of coaches jump in, and there's a lot of unrealistic expectation in business. I had it too. Actually, my mentor looked at me when I first started. He's like, I'm like, in 1 year, I'm going to do this. I remember him looking at me and he's like, give yourself 3 years. I'm like, no, I'm doing this in 1 year. Give yourself 3 years to hit that. But it's like after 3 years, I'm like, yeah, it made sense. And that was around the bigger goal. I was like, okay. So here's what coaches need to understand. So just like Dr. Sherry, if you have multiple sources of revenue, that's great. So in the beginning, when I started out, coaching was not my primary source. Now it is, but I've shared this before. I started doing Uber because I didn't know how else to do this. Now, if I had real estate like Sherry, I would have been a little bit better had I made better choices before then, but I didn't. So I had to do that. So now, when coaches jump in, they're like, well, you know what? I'm going to give myself 3 months and I'm going to make this happen. That's putting way too much. That's not what happens in business. You need to have at least a buffer of 6 months to 1 year to give yourself the space to start generating revenue, because there are a lot of pieces to understand. So while you're doing that, you either have a buffer, like a cushion in terms of money or you have a cash flow system somewhere else, whether that comes from job or real estate or wherever it comes from. You need to have something like that, because you're also providing for your family, unless you're well off, which is not that doesn't matter. But so what does that mean? That means that if you want to do better in coaching, you need to take care of that cash flow side where you're surviving. Like most coaches I talk to, they're struggling with survival and they're thinking about putting up their website. I'm like, makes no sense. It's like, why are you doing, how's that going to help you with business at all? And I want to talk about the activities of it in a little bit, but really understanding that, hey, if I need money to survive, business might not be the first place to go to if this is a startup, because every startup takes a little bit of time to pick up, even if you have the right support program. And the expectation is, and this is where the messaging that you hear in the marketing world is like, hey, 90 days, you're going to make 6-figure, and 1 year, you're going to make a 7-figure business. They're assuming that you know everything you need to know about the business, and they just give you the model and you'll put it to work. That's very few people.
Yeah. Very few people. Absolutely. Preach it.
What's your experience in there when it comes to these programs, Sherry?
Even coming into this, having been an entrepreneur in starting a brick and mortar business and running that for 9 years, I was completely unprepared for the amount of traction I would need to get. And so unless you've been in a very similar type of business where you've had to figure out your offer and you've had to think about how we present ourselves and our identity, because that's a piece in this whole transition too, is who are you? How do you even talk about yourself? All of that stuff has to be in alignment and working for the money side to really start to become a little bit more predictable. And yeah, I would love to just break it down a little bit more specifically and with some concrete numbers as some examples, because I think that would be the most helpful for our listeners.
So what did you have in mind in terms of concrete numbers?
Yeah. So let's maybe you can walk me through a little exercise. This is an exercise we do in our community. We've done this before with some of our members. Faisal, let's say that I'm a new coach into the community and haven't even got my first client yet. And I'm like, so I'm working on like updating my social media profiles, and I'm trying to figure out how to run ads, and I'm finishing on my website, and I haven't made any money yet. How would you approach me regarding the financial viability and kind of what my perceptions are about what I'm doing and what I'm going to make and the speed of all of that?
Yeah, so I would actually directly go into, first of all, I want to understand like what does coaching mean for you in your grand life scheme? Like, what are you trying to do? Are you building a full-time business, part-time business? How does this connect to your vision? Tell me a little bit about your vision and how does coaching fit in there? Because people have different ways they will approach it. And then I will want to know exactly, like, once you explain the vision, I would want to know, like, what's the lifestyle that you're building? Are there any other sources of revenue? Are there any other things you're doing? Like, okay, so if you were to put a dollar value to that ideal lifestyle, what would that be? And which part of that comes from coaching?
Yeah.
I would want to understand that. Usually coaches have no idea what that is. And so I have to walk them through. And when they get the number, they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, so now you have that. Now tell me a little bit more about where you are in your skill sets and your offer. I would want to understand, do you have a clear offer? And I would want to understand what you do to get clients normally. So this is where like it dispels all the stuff, because then a lot of the things that they're thinking about is actually meaningless when you put because what they're usually doing is what you said is like, well, I'm thinking about ads. Well, you're starting out, you have no idea what your messaging is. You have no idea what level of skill sets you have. So you're going to throw a bunch of money on ads, and that's assuming you're doing it. So you're going to have to spend a shitload of time learning ads and spend a bunch of money. So that's another skill set that you need to learn. That doesn't make sense. Okay, now you're thinking about your website branding. You're spending a bunch of time on that. Does that matter? Not matter. It actually doesn't matter in the beginning that much. Oh, you're considering how are you going to send your email funnel and all that stuff. How does that translate to money? So there are very clear, direct things outside of just manifesting money. There are very clear direct things you can do. Not that I have a problem with that, because our energy needs to be aligned with certain things. Like we need to feel like we deserve certain things to get it. Or at least we need to feel like we want this thing, if nothing. So you can't have like blocks around like, I hate money and I don't want to get this. People who have money is like deal with that stuff. That stuff you need to be, that needs to. But once you have that target number, then let's talk about like, how does this work in business? And this is the part that's hard for coaches to understand, because most coaches are not business owners. I wasn't either. They don't understand how you go from making no money to make six figure. Like it's complete. And usually it goes back to when you ask them, they're like, well, you know what? I'm attracting it. Like, explain how that works. There's nothing tangible in there
I
that you can
I walk around with magnets, and I'm hoping to. So let's say, Faisal, I want to make $10,000 a month. And that would push me over the six figure. So I would be a quote unquote six figure coach, which seriously, I feel like those numbers are irrelevant, because who cares how much you're taking home, or how much you're making if you're not taking it home. But that's a whole nother discussion. But let's say that I'm set on 10,000 a month. So how would you walk me through kind of dissecting that and figuring out, what do I actually need to do today? So we've talked about my vision. I've gotten alignment and clarity through previous conversations with you around my vision and how that fits in with the $10,000 a month. But now I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to be doing each day. And I'm just feel like I'm spinning my wheels.
Yeah. So, and this is the part too, like a key thing to understand, that almost everything you're going to do in the beginning of a coaching business will be sales. Everything connects back to sales, and everything connects back to also your skill sets. So you're spending a crap load of your time developing your skill sets. Even if you've been trained, even if you have a lot of knowledge around personal development, you actually have to put it to test now. Yeah. So what does that mean? That means that I would want to clarify what their offer is usually. So for example, when I ask coach, like, what's your offer, they're unclear. It's like, I think I'm like, if they have some idea of it, like, I think I want to charge $100 per hour or $75. Just thinking is a problem in business. Like, you want to charge people hourly, and usually therapists have that thinking process if they've been a therapist, or they've been in any kind of, like, they're massage therapist or something else, or from the psychology, they're trained to think in terms of hourly. We don't want to do that. We want to create an offer that gives value. It's a value-based offer. So I want to understand how much were they charging. Usually I'm trying to get them to raise that a little bit, because the way things work in business is that 1 month you might do very well. You might make 5,000 if you weren't making anything, but another month you might make 1,000. So how are you going to account for that? That means you need to charge a little bit more based on your skill sets to be able to do that, based on the value that you're giving. So let's say I help them think about, like, what would be a package where they can't track how many hours and all that stuff. You're telling them, hey, we're going to work. This package is going to help you do this. You're solving a problem for your client. For 6 weeks, we're going to work together. 12 weeks, ideally, we work together. 3 months is a good time. We work together, and this is what you get. And this 12-week package might be $3,000. Let's say if it's $3,000. Now, how many of those units sold translates to $10,000 a month?
Yeah. That's like a little over a 3.
Yeah, it's not that many.
Yeah.
And this is what makes coaching business, it's not selling toothpaste. So you don't need to make like a little bit over the, and just to answer the other questions, like, and actually in coaching business, one of the cool things is that the overhead is so low. Like, if you're starting out, you don't have that many expenses. It's like well over 90% of what you're going to do and making your coaching business, you're going to keep it, just minus the taxes and some other things that you're going to pay off, like your corporation and other things and payment systems. If you take out all that stuff, well over 90% you're going to keep. But once your business grows, that's gonna change a little bit. But in the beginning, the first 6 figure, I don't think you need to spend that much here, and you're gonna take home a lot of it. Versus a business like a restaurant might be 20% they keep.
Yeah.
Versus 90%.
So using your example, Faisal, of let's say that I'm trying to sell a package that's $3,000 and I'm wanting 10,000 a month. That means, let's just say I have to sell 4 people a month. You know, it's really 3 point something, but it's hard to sell half of a person to half of a person. So let's just call it 4. So I have to make 4 sales a month on average. So then what we do is we reverse engineer. Okay, well, if you want to have 4 people a month that buy, well, what are you doing prior to them buying that package? You're probably doing a sales call, a discovery call, something like that, maybe a webinar. So, okay, so then how many of those webinars do you need to do to get a client. If you're doing strategy sessions, maybe you're really struggling with getting all the pieces put together. Maybe you have to go through 10 people, 10 strategy calls to get one buyer. So if we want 4 in a month, that means, and we need to do 10 per buyer, that's 40 strategy sessions we need to do. And let's reverse engineer it even more. Like, how are you doing your outreach, and how many outreaches and people do you need to talk to in order for them to agree to have a strategy session? So this is how we take the money conversation and make it tangible and real to what do you need to do on a day-to-day basis to actually make your money goals happen.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.